It can be mysterious and very frustrating. Why do so many vendors struggle with selling into hotels these days?
Ah,
I have Celeste Berke Knisely here to peel back the curtain and share some secrets on selling into hotels. Welcome back to the Instinct Show, Celeste.
hello. So glad to be back. This is an area that I love to talk about because the bar is so low for vendors to be able to get the attention of those in hospitality. We're going to talk about how you can do that today.
Fantastic. What's the biggest misconception vendors have about selling into hotels, anyways, Celeste?
So I'm going to go with two misconceptions. The first misconception is that the property is able to make a decision. So when we look at things on a bell curve, most properties fit within that middle of a bell curve. They do not have the decision-making authority to actually decide upon your product and or your service. They can help influence and or get you a meeting. But a big misconception is that if I'm a vendor and I keep showing up, asking to speak to the general manager or the housekeeping manager, the executive housekeeper, or someone who's in maintenance and or the service department, that you are going to be able to sell your product or service. That is not how decisions are made in hospitality, especially at hotels that have a management company or an ownership layer. So when you don't understand the inner workings and the outer workings of a hotel, you are wasting your time. And I know this because my husband is a general manager and he is inundated daily and monthly with vendors that continue to show up who are checking a box because they are being told that they have to go visit that property to drop off samples, to drop off air scents, to drop off pool supplies when they're not even in the preferred vendor program. So I would say two misconceptions. Are you even in the program, the vendor's program? Do you know how they buy? Because a lot of them will use a preferred vendor. And if you're not in that, like it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to sell to them. And you also don't know the hierarchy. So you're often calling on people who can't honestly like influence when the decisions are made higher up. So I would say that is one misconception in that bucket. And I want to drop a second misconception.
Woo,
The
twofer.
misconception that you are selling to save time and to improve inefficiencies. I get a lot of hospitality tech vendor emails because of some trade shows that I've gone to. And I also see emails that come through from very frustrated on property sellers as well as operational leaders. And a lot of you sellers out there are going for things that no one really cares about or makes a buying decision based upon, which is helping them save time and helping them with inefficiencies. Newsflash, most businesses deal with inefficiencies. It doesn't mean that they are going to spend money, open up their wallet, and give you their business when all you're doing is talking about a surface level problem. So we have to move away from those inefficiencies, saving time, saving money. Businesses don't buy based on that. So two misconceptions right there that we got to debunk, we got to get away from.
Boy, there's two solid ones right there. And there are many. You didn't quite go that one step and talk about the features, right? So, but you did mention trade shows. So this is a great segue into what I'm going to talk about. And still, so many vendors still think a pure outbound strategy is going to get them to where they want to go in terms of growth. I'm here to tell them that is not at all the case. And if you do not have an effective content strategy that builds credibility with those EAT signals that AI is looking for, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust, all that time and resource that you spend at the trade shows, you got your sales team going out, even if you do get your foot in the door, you get in these conversations, you get farther down in the sales process, but then when they go to sign that 5-6 figure contract, or they're looking at onboarding and how difficult that's going to be, and they go vet you online, you don't have testimonials, you don't have case studies, you don't have anything that gives your prospect moments to pause. And I still see so many vendors out there spending most of their marketing budget of showing up at shows and deploying their sales department and not thinking it through on how AI and how we're all buying product. You were talking about your kitchen remodel. I bet you vetted that person to death online. We want to see if they back up online. I'm doing it. Your prospects are doing it. And if you're a vendor that is not taking that into consideration, that's a huge misconception. So
Yes, totally. This week I have an article that comes out. It's part one of a 3-part series that talks about what is happening with AI and how it is basically recommending you versus somebody else, or somebody else versus you, because you're not answering the public. You're not showing up to answer frequently asked questions. What are people looking for? So I think we have to move away from the traditional way of how we've gone to get business has changed. A lot of that work and what AI is doing to recommend is happening online. It is happening in a digital space. And so ensuring that you have a really robust marketing effort, a sales team that understands marketing, that you're understanding your buyer's journey, that they're well-versed in the business acumen, how decisions are made, what the hierarchy looks like in hotels. Hotels are a weird beast, right? There's nothing out there that's like them. And when we send sellers on property, or they send low-level basic emails to people post trade shows, like none of that is landing. In fact, today I told someone, this is actually hurting your brand. Like, please stop. I'm asking you to not reach out to anybody else in this manner. If I can be the person that tells you to stop, like stop, and this is why. So I think they don't realize the harm that they're doing with continuing to focus on features and product and thinking that the brand name or your product is going to be what sets you over the edge and what the bells and whistles are. It is not. That's not how people buy these days.
no, you hit it right on the head. I don't think vendors and those that are engaged in what you just talked about realize how quickly you can annoy a prospect. And once you've annoyed them, you put them on their heels, it makes that sales process so much harder. So I could not agree with you more. If you're not leading with value and education first, so that they actually recognize you from something you may have sent them and you're not trying to hard sell, I think vendors really need to take a hard look at that, and it's coming. And by the way, the gold standard of sales, word of mouth, referrals, right? That used to be, if you've got an engine based on that, you're set. That is not the case anymore. In fact, in my own experience, somebody had said, hey, I think I'm going to connect you with X, Y, and Z on it was a finance or mortgage or something. This person's great. I said, fantastic. I'll talk to that person. But before I made any step after the call, I vetted this person online, and it changed my view, even though my good friend sent me a word of mouth or recommendation. Well, AI gave me cause to pause, and it changed my outcome and how I proceed there. So just simple word of mouth and referrals that's no longer going to cut it anymore.
No, agree. And I have a similar buying journey. I'm at my wit's end with our insurance broker. I have asked 3 times, and I had to get my husband involved. I was like, I cannot, you have to take over this conversation. We're looking at changing one of our policies based on some information that we got from someone who's going to be handling our assets, financial planner, and making a change there. And each time I ask a question to the insurance person, they come back with them vagary, like super vague. Yes, you can do it, but your car insurance premium will change. Okay, by how much? So I keep asking a question. Well, what is the $1 million policy versus the $2 million? It's just more coverage. And so what has now happened is, because there's been too many back and forths and vagaries, I told my husband, after 10 years, we are done. We have 2 auto policies. We have our house policy. I have my business insurance. We have one life insurance policy, and now umbrella insurance policy. Because this person, a salesperson, is not able to answer my questions, they have lost all credibility with me, and I'm about to move my premiums elsewhere, even after 10 years. And so I take this and I posted it on Facebook today, right? Like trying to get some crowdsourcing of who people recommend. And all these people have weighed in on who they recommend. One person sent me a DM, one person. And they said, hey, sorry to hear about your experience. You could read some of my reviews here. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. They took what I said, my frustrations, and now turned it into read their reviews about their responsiveness, what they've done. But they took that extra step to personalize it, come into my DMs versus everybody else who's like, give me a call, here's my website. So I say these examples because we often forget, as I get so fired up, we often forget
There we go.
the way we buy as
Actually,
individuals
totally.
is the same as how businesses buy. There's a tiny little emotional piece. They're tying it back to, risk versus reward. They're looking at, does this actually solve a problem, or did I hire someone and they should care about this? So don't forget that the same things that we expect when we buy things personally, our buyers are going through that as well. And can we make it easier for them? Can we provide value? Or are we just constantly trying to sell to them, which happens with hospitality vendors?
Big time. You're so right. That whole notion sounds so simple of putting ourselves in our prospect's shoes. It is so rarely done. So beautiful personal example, by the way. That was fantastic. By the way, I'm doing my insurance myself and my finances thanks to our little AI buddies. So they respond quickly and aren't vaguely on the
and I do think that is something else to point out, right? If this gets put in a clip, if you're out there leading a team on the vendor side, right? You have a service, you have a SaaS product, it's a physical product, it's a plugin, whatever it is. You have to remember that AI and advances in technology have now made us all have no patience. We have no patience for delays. We have no patience for downtime, and we have no patience to wait for an answer. So I do feel like there is this, sellers out there in teams that truly understand the day in the life of a general manager. Yesterday, my husband sent me a message. He said, I'll talk to you during my break. And I was like, break? You're a general manager of a hotel, right? He was stripping rooms because they had a call off for a houseman. And my husband had to strip however many rooms. And he was telling me how disgusting it was. And he sent me a picture of the trash. If you don't understand the day-to-day of who you're trying to sell into, you become that annoyance. So how can you help them? How can you answer them quickly? How can you anticipate something so that you minimize all of the back and forth? That goes a long way to building your credibility. But you truly have to understand the day in the life of a VP of sales, a VP of operations, right? The CFO, chief human resource officer, and an on-property seller and or general manager.
Well, wait a minute now, because you tipped your hand to question number 2, which is a great segue. Why is selling to hotels uniquely challenging compared to other industries?
So I think it is one of the reasons it is challenging. It is because the job titles do not translate to what the rest of the world thinks. So when you're thinking of a general manager or a director of sales, in most other businesses, those people carry a lot of clout, right? They have access to, I almost said write a check, but you know what I mean? Like the checkbook, they can make a decision on spend. In hospitality, outside of independent hotels or standalone hotels, the majority of them roll up to a management company. And that management company has fiduciary responsibility to an ownership group to protect the asset. And that means all contracts, all spends, all MSAs, all blanket contracts for multiple service. They are trying to leverage the number of hotels they have in order to get the best pricing, the best terms. So I think there is a misconception of, I'm just going to keep calling this general manager or director of sales or executive housekeeper because they have this title, when in reality, you don't understand the hierarchy or the inner workings. They can be an amazing champion for you and help to influence the sale. But unless it's something they can put on their P card that's probably a couple $100, there's no chance. Unless they're an outlier, but the majority of hotels fall in, to a management company that is overseeing that to protect the asset.
Absolutely. My mentor, when I first got into this industry, I will never forget his quote. He says, Cory, in this industry of hospitality, you want to fly under the radar. And I didn't know at the time what he meant by that. But over the years of working since 95 in this industry, I begin to realize this industry is plagued with risk aversion. No one wants to take a chance on something new. They FOMO on it when somebody else does it and their success, because there's little upside when things go right, but there's a lot of finger pointing that goes on when things go sideways. So the risk reward benefit is way off. And I think a lot of people in the industry that have got a great idea, some new product that's got a bunch of bells and whistles are not factoring in onboarding, what could go wrong. And I think that is also another huge barrier or challenge on why vendors aren't. Oftentimes I hear, we have such a great product. If only more people in the industry knew how great it was. That's just such a jaded view. And
well, I think you hit on it right in your last point. If they only knew how great this product was. Again, we're back to talking about the product. There's probably a handful of products that are exactly like yours, and some are going to be manufactured elsewhere or done slightly differently and may come in at a low price point. We have to remember that this business is so fickle because it is so transient. So let's look outside hospitality for a second. Let's say you sell a service and you retain that client, and it's probably a year-long contract. Like, you're not ripping and replacing that customer every day, every 2 days. That is a long-standing contract. It's baked in, it's known. Flip to hospitality. While as a vendor, the hotel, the brand, the management company may be your customer, you have to think of their customers, which turn over in most hotels every 1 to 2 days. So it is ripping and replacing all of the customers every single day. And if something happens to the key metrics that all of us care about in hospitality, which is usually a decline in guest satisfaction, the things that the brand, we're penalized if we miss a QA, right? Our standards aren't where they want to be. Our guest satisfaction scores aren't where they want to be. Our productivity by room is not where we want it to be by the minute, or whatever the metric is. Our group pace is falling behind. If you're not selling in to solve one of those problems, take a seat on the bus of people who are all behind you trying to sell their latest and greatest product. You have to understand specifically what your product solves for, so that when you're talking to a general manager who really only cares about the gross profit, they're looking at productivity, they are trying to get their head around, how do I stock up toilet paper during our peak season so they don't have a no buy December? But you want to be able to speak their language to understand how you de-risk some of their business. And then same with the management company and those VPs. But if all you're doing is coming to them saying that you can provide a better air freshener, the air freshener people, please listen up. For air freshener, and you aren't tying it to guest satisfaction, reviews that you've seen online, maybe mold, the age of the building, all that, you got no shot. So again, the product.
well, Celeste, they're just trying to revolutionize hospitality, right?
Buzzwords.
Yeah, which occurs on pretty much every vendor booth header I see on a trade show, right?
And website. Everybody, and I think that is such a great something to notice. Please go to your competitors and other hospitality tech vendors. Please go to their websites. But everybody is saying the same thing. We're revolutionizing. We're cutting down the silos. You're going to have access to data. You're going to have all these insights. Like, there's a lot of buzzwords. And most of the time I sit around and like, what does that even mean? What do you do?
Absolutely. Oh man. All right, let's get down to brass tacks here. Let's talk about the how. So how should somebody approach selling to hotels differently if they want to win long-term?
Number one, and this comes from my gap selling roots. And again, I built this credibility. I built my chops in hospitality, working on property and above property. So like, I get it. If you've never worked inside of a hotel, I would suggest you go spend a day inside of a hotel shadowing. You'll learn a lot. But really, what I have learned is about selling to business problems. Now, some organizations will say to me, oh yeah, we understand what problems we solve. I actually have a couple companies right now who have come back and said, we did this exercise. We got 75 answers to what we solve for across our org. We realize that's a problem. It's not in sync. There's no alignment. Everybody is talking differently out there in the marketplace. Like, that is not good. So I would say one thing that you can do, and I have a resource, I'm happy to give it to you, is get crystal clear on what your organization and your product solves for. It's typically not more than 4 or 5 business problems. I will give you one. If it's declining guest satisfaction and you absolutely can show how you solve for that, you can help build a case around that specific to a set of hotels. So I would say from a tactical standpoint, like, do not pass go, do not enter another hotel, do not go on another sales call, do not send another email until you unequivocally know what it is that you solve for at the business level, because that's where decisions are made based around a business problem, the things that the C-suite and the board sit up at night, are worried about. So start there. It's a tough exercise, but it's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to echo that same sentiment. And I'd say get obsessed about solving your ICP's most painful challenges, exactly what you just mentioned, and then building authoritative content around that. So as you know, that comes with an inbound strategy. It's kind of, we started this conversation, what I spoke about, and we built a framework on it. You're familiar with the WINS method framework. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown of this. It's broken down into 4 nice, needy sessions of start with the website. Make sure your website is optimized for conversion, based exactly what you talked about, solving your ideal prospects, and also for AI, just like we talked about, of having social proof, deep FAQs, all those elements that we talked about earlier. Your first party data. Email is still the OG. You've got social media, you've got ad channels are now plummeting, but your first party data, your gold is in your list. So make sure your first party data is dialed in, it's segmented, and it's based on relevancy, where they might be in your sales journey. If it's an existing customer, if it's past customer, maybe you lost them, huge opportunity there. Email is still the best. And creating content that speaks to roadblocks, objections, stories, and solutions. And finally, S, learn how to use intent-based signals to nurture prospects that show some level of interest, so you're just not spending your time fishing in water that there are no fish in. So 4 letter frameworks. I'm going to drop a link. Obviously, there will be one in the blog post. So your resource, mine, that's going to give them some great places to start on that. So,
and one thing that I think people often forget is that sales has changed. Sales and marketing are now kind of blended together. So sellers, everybody on your team should understand when they are not on a public platform answering questions, when they're not involved in the conversations, nobody knows they exist, which means nobody knows your business exists. You're either going to have to spend a lot of money acquiring business, your customer acquisition cost goes up, or you can leverage some of the things that Cory was talking about. I'm going on vacation next week, so I've written an article already for next week, part 2 of my 3-part series that actually talks about, well, where the heck as a seller do I find some of this information? The frequently asked questions. If I'm not a contributor to the website, I'm not a contributor to the blog, where can I start finding this? So we can provide you, like, there's no shortage of information on where you can find the questions that your ideal customer is asking. What forums are they hanging out in? And then how do you start answering those with your own expertise following Cory's, the WINS method? I mean, there is no reason that we can't all be showing up more in AI searches. And you really have to decide, am I okay with the results that we're getting now? And if you're not, am I open and willing to change, even though it may be scary and I may not understand all of this? You can learn it. Cory and I are here in our second act of life to tell you, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And we're out there learning in the trenches and using AI and adapting, because it's grow or die, and we have to continue to grow.
Beautifully said. 58 here, almost 59. So yes, old dog for sure. All right. Well, I got 12 on you here. Now, this is a great barrier that we should ask all the vendors. If the question was, Celeste, is trust a variable that's needed for somebody to buy your product? If anybody says yes, how do you think you're going to build trust with a prospect that does not know who you are, what your product does, unless you're doing exactly what we're talking about? It is so much more difficult to build trust now. You and I have been in the trenches for quite some time, right?
Yeah. And there's still a lot of people who don't know who we
I
are.
know, imagine that, right?
We have to build it. Yes. Again, I think long gone are the days where there's like a PLG motion, right? A product-led growth to where your product is just going to be so supreme. I mean, go out and look at energy drinks. There are so many, and they kind of ultimately are all like made up of the same ingredients, kind of like do the same thing. So you are no different. I know you think that you're a unicorn. We all like to think that, but other people are entering the market right now because making an app, creating a service, the bar is so low to entry that people are joining. They're putting a couple $100 behind a company, and poof, now I have this robotic cleaner that's going to go around a hotel floor and it's going to enable you to cut down on your staff. Well, you're asking the team to cut, Maria. My husband has like 3 Marias that have been there like 25 years, right? They're staple. They are the ones that are the reason that the productivity per room is so low. Like, why would I want to cut them versus a robot that's completely unknown? So we're in this space of, I think, really that trust and credibility can be broken so quickly. But it takes a while for you to build it because there's so much noise.
Yep.
There are so many ads. Everybody, like, we are all just these robots, and it's like in personalization, standing out, providing value, listening, to Cory's point about those signals. That woman that I referenced, if this is cut up in a clip, go back and look at another clip, but she used something I said and sent me a direct message as a result of it. That stands out versus her just pitching her product.
Beautiful. All right. Let's talk about real world examples. I know you have a boatload of them, especially when you've got your hubby, the GM on property. You've shared quite a few with me, with side splitting. So can you share maybe just one example of someone that's cracked the code and maybe have actually sold into a hotel group?
So I do believe I could probably call them by name. There is 2 CRM groups, I will say, who I think are doing a great job as far as leveraging personalization, meeting the market where it is and providing value, giving without asking. And therefore we are seeing their wins.
No pun
intended. But when you look at the messages that they're sending out, their weekly download, it is all about value. It's inviting you into something, whether that's a webinar where they're highlighting something new that is happening that may be helpful for you. It is bringing other partners in. They are doing it through a growth of truly understanding their buyer and that buyer's journey and the experience versus some other vendors who every single week I get an email that's like, look at our product, come to our latest product release. So the difference is in the lens. It's all about you, the prospect, the customer, and what's going on with you. And then there's the other lens. It's all about us and the product. And that just becomes noise to our buyers. So I can think of 2 CRMs, we'll say, in the hospitality, I would consider them vendor space, who are doing well because they're making it about their customer and not about them and the product.
This is a great segue into our example. So the luxury of us here at Lure is we practice what we preach. What I just explained to you, we actually do for vendors in the space right now. And what's awesome about it is I see every inbound lead that comes in personally. And it's great because I get to learn from it. There'll be some...
You get the dopamine hit too.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It's working.
Sometimes Susan will send this to me and goes, you see where this came from? It'll be from one of our toolkits or one of our lead mags. It's like, oh my, it's like a virtual champagne toast. It's really cool to see that. And we just know exactly what we talked about before. If you are laser focused on finding out exactly what those specific pain points are to your ISP, and you send them consistent doses of value over a period of time, you don't even have to say the word sale. You don't have to ask for a demo. You don't even need to do for a hard ask at all, period. The sales will come. And it's really fun to see some of these leads, and they'll literally quote something specific that struck them. It'll say, I read your latest post on X, Y, and Z, and I noticed that this particular person was struggling with the same issue. We have that same problem too. Can you help us? And it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And I think it goes back to your point about selling into hotels is different because depending on how large the ticket is, there's a huge procurement process that you have to go through. And there are a lot of people who come to the table to make that decision and then weigh in with their opinions. But I can tell you what, when you are curating that experience and you are doing basically like account-based marketing is what Cory has kind of alluded to is you're nurturing somebody, you're showing them how you've helped others, you understand what it is like to be in their seat, and they can see themselves in that problem environment. They also want that fix and they become problem aware. When you get that win, the FOMO that it creates throughout the ripple in hospitality is unlike any other industry. Then all of a sudden, everybody wants on board. Like, oh, they're doing this. We want to do that. But you have to be able to switch between what is our long-term strategy? What is the long-term play? And I do believe in hospitality and both hospitality tech, things can become so short-sighted because leadership is like, where are the KPI? Where's the activity? What is happening right now? And not realizing that many of us, you may have this stat, but at least 10 or 15 times we have to see something before we take action. Thinking that our buyers are going to take action on your $100,000 SaaS solution from one conversation, like your head is in the clouds. So how do you nurture them without sell, but showing them the journey, because change is hard. And I don't know if any of you have been through a Delphi conversion way back in the day when you had to go to paper, before then 2 weeks and you were downtime, like that still exists. And change is really difficult. So asking someone to rip and replace something, you have had to have nurtured them along the way. And those companies that are doing that really well understand that, and they are winning. And that's how you create the FOMO. When you land one of those logos, the others will be barking down your door because they want in. They want that same thing, but they want somebody else to test it.
That's that risk aversion. Absolutely. Bringing it back full circle. And you hit on a really good point is what I mentioned before. Salespeople are getting pressure to book more business, but the harder they press and they don't nurture appropriately, they're hit unsubscribed or they're blocked, or it's so much easier now to avoid salespeople. And I think a lot of them are not realizing the harder that they push and they don't nurture, it's making it that much more difficult, right?
Totally. So, and you also have to understand, I think it comes back to understanding your buyer. If you sell in and you need a VP approval, VP of ops, or the senior vice president, I want you to know that that person is on the road 3 to 4 days a week, every single week. The amount of emails that my husband gets as the GM of On Property, he just made a transition, a management company switch. I mean, he is stressed. He's getting 50, 60, 70 a day, plus the inner workings. So again, if you think that you're going to be like a one-hit wonder and get in with one email or one call, figure out a way that is helpful to somebody else. And it goes so much further than just adding to that noise. And I totally wish that we had this, a silver bullet or silver something, and it was super easy. Like we could just hit the easy button. It is not. Cory and I are in the same boat. We're both, more than Cory wants to admit himself, like we're salespeople. We are having to start conversations. We're having to find insights online. And we hear no or ghosts quite often, but we aren't attached to an immediate sale. We are looking longer term on how we're going to build out content, how we're going to answer the public, how we can provide value, how we can refer, how we can back it up so that we eventually land and then people have that FOMO.
Exactly. Boy, another banger, almost 40 minutes here.
Whoa. Okay.
Another great conversation. And before we break,
I will say, I say this coming from a place of like, I've been there. I worked in hotels. I understand the inner workings. And then I went to corporate and I understood the inner workings there. I had 19 hotels, like coast to coast. Then as a seller outside of that through gap selling, the last 3 years, I've been exposed to SaaS companies and tech companies and vendors. And I can tell you without a doubt, unless you're like a brand new company and you've been around for a while, what I am seeing in the tech SaaS space is that most companies are having below a 20% win rate, many below a 10% win rate. They are burning through leads because they're not qualified. We're trying to push something on someone. We're leading with our product. We're ticking people off. We see very low conversions. We go right to a demo. Nobody cares about your product. We skip discovery. So there's all of these things that I'm like openly sharing with you. There's such a better way to do a problem-centric discovery and to lead with problems and really establish the trust and credibility up front from your buyer. It goes a long way to keeping them through the conversion through your sales cycle than leading with a demo, leading with your products, and having hope as a strategy that it's going to get better. It is never.
Nope. Wow. We need a round 2 because we could keep going. I caught myself like, all right, don't.
No, there's the whole trade show.
Oh my God.
What happens post trade shows, and most people are using like a burner account post trade show because they don't want your email where you're just gonna throw product.
We got to dive into that. So let's do a round 2 of this for sure. But before we break, where can people find you, by the way?
So I mostly hang out on LinkedIn. My entire focus is supporting hospitality sellers, hospitality tech, and event tech. I'm really niching down into that space, just given my background. So Celeste Berke Knisely on LinkedIn. Definitely there would be one of the best places for you to find me. And if you poke around on Cory's profile, I'm sure I show up somewhere, so you can easily find me. But happy to give you some resources that can help you start to identify what problems you solve. I can tell you when I first did that exercise, I cried. It was really difficult. It is very difficult for all of our customers. And we actually did this exercise for our new product and service line for Sales on Tap. So we know exactly what business problems we solve. We're not talking about inefficiencies, services, etc. So highly encourage if you want that exercise. I'm happy to share it with you. It's called the pick.
Lovely. As well as maybe we'll add a few prompts and a few other items in there on the post. So we'll have some goodies for this audience for sure. So hey, as always, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me. I had a blast, and we're gonna do round 50 of our conversation.
Yeah, death by trade.
Let's do it. Maybe we can map out a working exercise. Actually, that might be a tactical. That might be kind of fun. Yeah. All right.
Would business stay the same if you didn't go to the trade?
Hey, what to do if you don't go to the trade show? There's an interesting concept.
Yes. But I really do see a huge shift that has to happen with hospitality vendors. The way that you're selling, not all of you, but I've had plenty of conversations where it's all about the products. It's all about what you think people want. And honestly, doing the exercise, what are people asking? Go spend a day with your ideal persona at a property. You will be amazed at how you think they spend their time is not usually what they spend their time doing. It'll be very eye-opening for your own sales journey and your own kind of upping your business acumen.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for spending a few minutes with me, and I can't wait to continue the conversation. So, all right. See you next time.